Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, okay, so what I'll do is I'll just introduce you, and then let's see here. Just I'll remember this. Is your home club Laughing Matters?
I actually don't have a club that I'm currently a member of that I consider a home club. When I think of,
Okay.
I'll tell you when kind of that goes on the thing if you like, or I can say it now. My original home club was Community Toastmasters, and when you ask me, even though I'm not a member of that club anymore, if you ask me what my home club is, I still think of that one.
Got it. Got it. Well, so we could just say, you're a member of two clubs, I think, right? Or are you a member?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
that's
So you're a
right.
member of
Sorry for
Laughing
speaking
Matters,
through at this stage.
and then now,
Um,
do you have an officer position in Laughing Matters?
no, I'm a recent joiner.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Okay. I got it. All right. Okay. So here we go. I'm going to start. I am so excited to have with me Jessica Freasier, who is a member of two clubs, Laughing Matters, where, of course, laughing really does matter,
It
and
does.
of Master Speakers of Austin, where speakers master their craft. And
Absolutely.
Jessica and I hold officer positions in Master Speakers. And what's your role this year in Master Speakers?
VP of membership.
Okay, so that would explain why we have so many new members. It's okay, doesn't
That's a
matter.
good one.
The reason I have Jessica here with us today, folks, is because of her Australian accent. Right? Yes,
Absolutely.
exactly.
That's usually the
Absolutely
reason
true.
people invite me to things.
Right, right, exactly. The reason I have Jessica here today is because I feel that she has a lot to offer when it comes to providing folks with information related to evaluations. And of course, as we all know, the evaluation contest is that second portion this year. Go to districts, and the opportunity for folks out there to learn, hone, and really refine their skills in the evaluation piece is really important. And I wanted to spend some time today with you, Jessica, to talk a little bit through the genesis of evaluations and where you came from and then where you are today. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about some of the tips and tricks and the gotchas. But first, I want to know, how long have you been in Toastmasters?
So I joined Toastmasters in 2012. I actually took a little bit of a break when I was back in Australia. So I've been a member of Toastmasters cumulatively for about 6 to 7 years.
Okay. Were you a member of Toastmasters when you were in Australia?
No, but it's funny. My sister actually dragged me to my first ever Toastmasters meeting there before I came to the US.
Okay.
So that was where I kind of cut my teeth on Toastmasters, but I didn't ended up actually joining until I moved to Austin.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So, really, for the past 6 years, then you've had the experience of what we would, call the U.S. or District 55. So your world from that perspective really revolves around the 4,000 members here.
Pretty much, yeah. I've been a member of a number of clubs here. This is kind of the base of my Toastmasters experience. It was really interesting to visit clubs in Australia and see how they did it different, but I have to say I felt like it paled a little bit in comparison. So I'm very excited to be back here and participating in the community again.
That's great. That's great. Now, being a member of two clubs has its advantages, certainly because you have a wider array of talent, right? You have more speakers to choose from, you have more opportunity to evaluate and other roles. But I'm curious to know, for the folks that don't know at home, right? Master Speakers of Austin, we're an advanced club and we really focus on evaluations, right? Feedback. Our club offers up to 6 evaluations: content, delivery, and impact. And so, what I'd like to do first off is talk about Laughing Matters and talk about the evaluations. Talk to me a little bit about the method that you use in Laughing Matters and how that might differ from Master Speakers.
Absolutely. The evaluation you have in a regular club, I'm not sure I would call Laughing Matters a regular club. They have their own kind of quirks and twists, which is great. But it does differ because you're not focused on those three elements that you mentioned of contact, impact, and evaluation. Sorry, contact, delivery, content, delivery, and impact. It is more the feedback sandwich method, which is give some positive feedback, give some areas for improvement, and then wrap it up with one or more positives. in MSA, obviously we do it a little bit differently, but I think that, you know, the structure is a bit more simplified. It's more general feedback as opposed to domain or area specific feedback, such as content, such as delivery. I think it's really interesting the different types of methods you can have, but I think there's a place for both. I wouldn't say one is better or one is worse. I think that if you're providing a general evaluation, then not a general evaluation of a meeting, as we might know, but a general evaluation of a specific speech, it's good to use the feedback sandwich. I still value that highly as a method, and I would use that for contest speeches. I wouldn't necessarily go with a content delivery impact. I know folks that do, but I still think it's worth using that more straightforward approach. I still consider compact content in, I'm really messing this up, content delivery and impact for in my evaluation, make sure I cover all those areas. But as far as the structure of it, that's still what I do. But again, for contests, it's a little bit different. I would do it differently. So there's a lot of things to consider in giving an evaluation.
Okay, that's great to actually segue into the contest piece of it. And again, we're not here to tell people the rules. We're not here to tell people what's right and wrong and everything. I mean, I think we would both agree, look, if you're going to compete in the evaluation contest, read the official rule book so that you have some ideas of what is acceptable, what judges are looking for, et cetera. And I think, when you talk about the sandwich method and you do read the rule book, you find out that it isn't necessarily any one particular method, but they do talk about, how many positives are mixed in with how many rooms for improvement, right? I mean, so there's some definite specificity within the rule book. But, let me talk about, why did you decide to join Master Speakers? Because again, it's a completely different world, as you spoke about, right? I mean, content, delivery, and impact are very specific. And for the folks at home who don't know, an evaluator only focuses on one of those three to provide a speaker with feedback. So what drew you to Master Speakers?
That's a really great question. I was actually drawn by the people I knew from the Toastmasters community. So I had members of Master Speakers who were also members of another club that I was a member of at the time. I knew several other members from competitions, such as Juan and Barbara Abbott. I knew individuals from otherwise in the community. For example, Laura Redfern, in my first year of being a Toastmaster, had invited me to be a test speaker at a club of hers. So it's just, I knew most of them already, and I knew what kind of people they were, which was amazingly empathetic and just very hyper-focused on ensuring that their members had a great experience, as well as getting their own goals met. And that was kind of the ethos I was sort of looking for in a club. But also, I was just really interested to sort of take it up to the next level. I didn't have any specific goal, like I want to be a paid professional speaker or I want to be a paid trainer, although I have interest in both these things. But I didn't go to Master Speakers, I'm going to go there to do that thing. I just knew that being a part of that club would be really beneficial to me personally, as well as help improve my speaking ability for whatever I decided to apply that to.
Got it. Okay. All right. Yeah, that's a great piece of experience and a great differentiator between Master Speakers and what we would call a normal Toastmaster club. So let's talk a minute. There is a contest coming up, and is that something that you're thinking about entering this year?
Absolutely. For those of people who've known me for a long time, I always compete given the opportunity. I absolutely adore competing, and that's where I've met a lot of the people who I've kind of interacted with the Toastmasters community at contests. I also love evaluation, so I absolutely will be competing in the evaluation contest. I love it. I've competed every opportunity that I've had for evaluation, but I usually compete anyway. So yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Good. No, that's great to hear. So look, evaluating is tough because you have to listen, and you have to listen in a way that you want to get the idea of the story. You want to listen to what the speaker has to say, all of the variations of vocal variety and physical and projection and all those things. But you don't want to miss the outline. You don't want to miss, did they mention the three? So how can you possibly listen and really be taken in by the speech, and also at the same time provide a critique to that individual?
That's a great question, and that's a really hard question to answer. I would say practice is a big piece of this. I would also say that if you want to get good at evaluating speeches, teach people how to evaluate. I've actually delivered a couple of different seminars on literally this topic, how to give a good evaluation for newer clubs. And that actually really reinforced for me what are the different things that you need to think about. And there are so many. And I would say, first and foremost, being really clear on your role as an evaluator is key to giving a good evaluation. You wear a few different hats as an evaluator. The first hat that you wear is encouraging and motivating speakers to want to do it again. Basically, a lot of people come to Toastmasters and they have the fear of public speaking, they have the nervousness or the insecurities about their own ability to give a good speech, and just generally are very down on themselves about giving good speeches. And so as an evaluator, you really want to be encouraging. You want them to kind of feel good about what they've done and want to do it again. That's how we get to have clubs. If people are motivated, if people are feeling positive, they get positive reinforcement. So that's really key, being an encourager, being a motivator. Another hat that you wear is evaluating the speech that you're given. So a lot of people want to kind of provide their own story or step into their own kind of narrative a bit. Just no, you want to kind of take the speech that you're given and evaluate that. That is kind of what you're there to do. It sounds obvious, but people tend to forget that because a speech might trigger in them something like, oh, I remember this cool story of my own and want to share that. That's not really what you're there to do as an evaluator. So really presenting your own view of their speech, but making sure you're focused on their speech and also what they want to get out of it. And bringing your own perspective to that. I think that that's really key. Just being clear on your roles as an evaluator is a big one.
Okay, that's great. And you bring up a really important point there, and that is many times when we evaluate, we tend to talk about ourselves. We tend to say, "Oh, I had that same experience and X, Y, and Z," and you've lost time and you've lost credibility because, of course, we know the evaluation is about that individual, that speaker, not about us. So that's a key takeaway, and something that I think everybody who is looking to compete or just provide feedback and evaluations should be mindful of. Let me ask about this. A lot of times we'll hear evaluators almost recap a speech, right? They'll say, well, you talked about the 3 points A, B, and C, and then you went on to say, and then you went on to do. It seems like that isn't necessarily a strong way to evaluate, because all you're doing again is almost giving a Cliff's Notes version, and that doesn't help them with improvement or with getting better. What's your thought about that type of an evaluation, and what would you say to somebody who's kind of stuck in that mindset?
Yeah, it is very tempting, I think, for certain individuals. I've never been tempted to go down that road because I always have my own thoughts and opinions on things that I really want to share. But
Mhm.
some people want to act as a reflection. An evaluation can be a reflection of a speech. It's like, okay, gave you this. This is what that looked like. This is what you gave me. And as a way to evaluate. And while that has its merits, potentially it doesn't have the key component of a good evaluation, which is analysis. Actually, identifying in that what your reaction to it was, what your experience of it was, watching the people around you, what was their experience or reaction to the speech, what technically was good about it versus technically perhaps could use some improvement, versus as you say, the cliff notes or just the read back, the read through. you don't need to tell them what they spoke about. They know what they spoke about. They wrote the speech, they delivered it. What can you give them that actually adds value, that gives them something to work on for next time and helps them kind of lift their game as a speaker? That's what you want to be focused on.
Okay. Okay. And you said something earlier that is really true, and that is that an evaluation in itself is almost a 2 to 3 minute speech.
It
If you
is.
think about it, right? Because really what we're trying to articulate to that speaker is, I have some points I want to talk to you about, tell them about those points, and then at the end summarize perhaps what you've spoken about. And it's challenging in a 2 to 3 minute speech or evaluation to really look at what's the best way to communicate. But I think if people were to view it as a 2 to 3 minute speech, just like they would be giving to an audience, that there could be some success there. And I've listened to your evaluations, and you're very good at kind of doing the tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them type of an evaluation. I mean, that's kind of challenging to do, and maybe that's a learned thing. But talk a little bit about how do you frame that as you're writing out your evaluation so you know you can hit those points.
No, great question. And I appreciate your lovely comments on my ability. I mean, obviously, evaluation is something I've been very focused on and I really enjoy. So I've developed some level of proficiency with it. But part of it, I would say, is because I'm a writer and I'm very addicted to having a structure for anything that I craft in terms of content. I think
Hmm.
that I'm not very comfortable with having like, oh, we'll just la la la, it just doesn't work. I want to have the clean structure of intro, body, conclusion. Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them you told them, kind of thing. So that is something that's very important to me. But also, I'm really just focused on, I don't think about my evaluation as a speech. And I don't know if I would agree that that's a good thing to try and target. Yes, you want it to be crafted. Yes, you want it to be high quality. Yes, you want it to have a direction and a structure. But I just kind of view it as almost an addendum or a support for someone else's speech. My evaluation doesn't exist without something to evaluate. It's not so much a speech as just me trying to use the best of the time available to give them the best feedback that I have on how they can do it better. It's interesting because this is the first time I've actually thought about an evaluation as a speech, because I don't generally think of it that way.
Sure, sure. Well, it makes sense. And in essence, it really is a 2 to 3 minute speech.
You're
It's
right.
somewhat like a table topic is a 1 to 2 minute speech. And
Agreed.
there's a rationale behind that. So, well, let's kind of switch to the success and the gotchas. And we've already talked about some of the things that can make an evaluation successful, as well as some things that might hinder. We talk a lot about when we start a speech, we don't necessarily say, my speech today is about X, or talking about something. And then you say, so I'm going to talk about, right? We don't do that. And in an evaluation, what do you feel is the most powerful? Is it to come out there and say, Jessica, thanks so much for that speech? Or is it to say, Jessica, I wanted to talk to you about, or, how do you think, right? An evaluation should start that's really going to punch and get the judges and really the rest of the crowd to acknowledge, wow, starting off on the right foot.
Yeah, that's a great question. I love that question. So my answer is actually, I treat a contest evaluation quite differently from a regular or even MSA evaluation.
Okay.
It's a performance. You're kind of putting on a show. You're no longer in that sort of supporting role. Yes, you have to support, but you also have to be the star of the show and manage both at the same time. So it's a really interesting balancing act, but you do have to kind of bring those those entertaining elements to your evaluation where maybe you didn't before. Some speakers, you have to kind of jazz it up a bit to help them hear you, but otherwise you're not necessarily focused on being funny or being entertaining. You're just trying to give them good feedback. In a contest setting though, you have to get people's attention. You have to be memorable. You have to be someone that the judges see favorably and remember and want to score highly. So I start a contest evaluation speech in a very specific way. I try to start it with a bit of an entertaining, hopefully funny one-liner on the theme of their speech that kind of gives a bit of a summary or an overview or a taste of what their evaluation is going to be like. So an example, when I was had a test speaker who was talking about themselves as a car, and using the analogy of a car to talk about how, you know, old and decrepit they'd gotten. I had a bit of fun with that, and I just told the individual, you know, Dennis, you're a sleek, slick sports car. You were ready to hit the road when you came out to talk to us. And that kind of summed up, you know, both my experience of the speech, because it was a fantastic speech, but also the theme of his speech. So I really, you know, encourage being a bit creative. Another example that I think helped grab people's attention when I was evaluating a test speaker in a competition was they were talking about human connection in their speech. It was all about establishing human connection. Great, it was a great speech. I started off by saying that he may as well have been Verizon because he enabled all of us to connect to him, which, you know, got a good laugh from the audience. So if you can start your contest evaluation with a one-liner that kind of grabs people's attention and makes them want to listen to you, as with any contest speech, then that's really going to be to your benefit.
Okay. Wow. That was fantastic. That's some really good pieces of advice. Some pretty pointed remarks. When I think about the fact that an evaluation is a speech, and again, I know you're starting to think in those terms, we really have to be mindful that in 2 to 3 minutes during a contest, the filler words, the ability to really stay on point is even more important than it would be if we're just doing it in a club. And we recognize that during a table topic, as an example, because it's so natural for you and I to have a conversation, we're going to throw filler words in there because you and I, as human beings, we tend to say the uhs and the ums once in a while. It's natural. You get into a table topic, you try really hard to not do that. You get into an evaluation, and to sort of speak extemporaneously for 2 to 3 minutes without a filler word can be tough. So now let's think about a contest evaluation. And I'll go back to what I said at the outset, how concise you are. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have you here today was because your thoughts, the way that you articulate the message is incredibly concise. I am probably one of the most verbose and loquacious people on the planet. And what happens is all of a sudden I see that yellow light and I realize I've only got, 30 seconds to 40 seconds. And then I start to speed up a little bit and then I don't really get my point across. And how do you make sure that you can get your time down so you don't pass that 3:30-minute mark?
It's really, really funny that you describe me that way, because I think of someone who constantly goes over time. I have been known to give multiple 5 to 7 minute speeches that last 20 minutes. So it takes practice. It takes a lot of people being very cross with you because you consistently go over in your evaluations. But you also get a bit of a feel for it. The more evaluations you do and the more focused you are on limited resources, limited time, what is the most important thing that I need to impart to this speaker? What do they really need to know? If there's one or there's two or if there's three things that I get to tell them, what are those things? And just let it be there, and you will still have the opportunity to talk to that person unless one of you falls off the face of the earth. You can give them more feedback later, but by focusing on the most important things to tell them. But I can really relate. I enjoy my verbosity as well. I have been told by many that I use far too many words to say the thing, and I try to work on that, but it's a work in progress.
I come by it naturally. I tell you, that's the way it goes. So 2 more things here before we wrap up. And that the first one is, all right, so I'm at home, I'm watching this, I'm thinking, yeah, maybe I'll do the evaluation contest. I mean, I'm not a very good evaluator. There's no point in me doing it. What do you say to somebody who's either emphatically, no, there's no way I'm doing it, or they're on the fence? What do you tell them to try to put them, in a position where just go for it?
Look, the beauty of evaluating is there's no such thing as right or wrong feedback. It's all about your experience of the speech, and everyone has a different view, a different perspective that is unique to them. So, regardless of how much or little evaluation experience you have something to offer that no one else does. So, remembering that, but also remembering that, sometimes a less experience can be a good thing, because as experienced Toastmasters, we come to an evaluation with a certain number of expectations, with looking at it through the filters of the right way to do a speech, and the techniques and the good practices that we know about. If you're a relatively new Toastmaster, you're coming to it with a fresh set of eyes. You're not bringing kind of, I won't say the baggage, but the benefit and sometimes the drawback of all that kind of those filters that we otherwise bring. So I have actually seen relatively new Toastmasters do really well at evaluation competitions, because they're able to just focus on what's my experience of the speech and deliver great feedback on that basis.
Excellent advice. And I was voluntold the first year I was a Toastmaster to be in an evaluation contest, and I placed second in area or something like that. And afterward, the judges can't tell you what you did or didn't do well. They're not allowed to do that, except for a couple years later, I did in fact get the feedback that I spoke too much about my personal experience and how it pertained to their speech. And so, had I known that a year earlier or something, it might have made a difference, but it was spot on with what you spoke about earlier. And that is, you just can't make the evaluation about you.
It's so tempting for us to put ourselves into the evaluation, because we want to be part of the story. We all want to be part of the story, but learning to let yourself not be part of the story, but contribute to the story is
right. I think I really do feel that is the number one component of an evaluation that isn't as strong, and that is, my gosh, you're going to be listening to me for 2 to 3 minutes. I got to tell you everything about me in 2 to 3 minutes, which you and we could never do. We could barely get through 4 words. And the point here is, so I have one final thing, and that is, what else would you like to talk about? What else would you like to cover? What else would you like to let the audience know at home about evaluations, good, bad, or indifferent, that we can leave them with as they go on their journey to start competing?
So many things. I would probably talk on this topic for 2 hours if you'd let me, but I'll try and sum up some of the things that I think are most important. Some things that I didn't kind of mention earlier when you're talking about, okay, how do we give good evaluations? There are 2 ends of extremes. Sometimes all they want to talk about is the good stuff. Oh my God, it was amazing speech. Nothing to improve on. It was perfect. There is no such thing as a perfect speech. There is always, 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 always something to improve on. So really kind of digging deep and kind of putting past, your filters of, oh my God, this is a wonderful person, but also taking them off that pedestal. They may be someone you respect, but, being a little bit critical, looking at everything and trying to find something that you can give them to improve on, even if it's like a suggestion just for how they could do it differently that might please you a bit better. So something, always an area of improvement. On the other end of the spectrum, you have the people, like, when you just don't like anything about the speech. You hope that you can always find something, but sometimes you might be thinking, look, this really just didn't resonate with me. I found it boring. It rubbed me the wrong way. I know I'm supposed to talk about a lot of positives, but I don't really have many positives to share. And I did this whole segment in my evaluation training on finding the good in the speech, because there's always, always good to be had. And there's, it's interesting how some of those negatives can kind of be flipped to positives. Like if you're offended by a speech, you can comment favorably on the courageousness or the courage of the speaker in kind of going to a place that could potentially offend audience members. If they're sharing a lot of what you're finding to be boring facts and figures, you can comment favorably on their preparedness or their knowledge of the subject matter. There's always something you can find that's sort of positive in a speech. And having the mindset of finding the good is, I think, a really key component of being a good evaluator. I could talk at length, but I'm just going to summarize a few more things, which is compassion. I think having compassion and caring about other people's experience and what other people think, feel, and do is really important to kind of being a good evaluator, as well as curiosity, being interested in general. Otherwise, you're not going to listen. If you're not interested in what's going on with other people, then you're just going to be checked out. You're going to be thinking about your pets, your family, whatever's going on in your own life, the workday. One of the beautiful things I love about Toastmasters meetings is it forces me to check out of my own stuff and focus in on what's going on with other people, what they're giving to me, and appreciating that for what it is. And just being forced to listen and learn along the way. Being genuine. It is really, really important to be genuine in your speech. I've sort of mentioned flipping the script a bit on kind of finding good where you don't see good, or finding things to focus on when you're just like, oh, I loved it. But being honest about what your experience of the speech actually is so important for evaluations. Anything else is a disservice to the speaker. You're not actually helping them if you don't share with them what their speech was like for you. So it's really important to be genuine, but as appreciative as you can be, because they've given you a gift. Even if it wasn't the gift you asked for, even if it wasn't a gift you wanted, it's still an opportunity for you to learn and kind of experience something that you otherwise wouldn't have got to experience. So yeah, those are the big ones.
Powerful stuff, powerful stuff, and some really good pieces of advice, Jessica. I can't thank you enough for taking the time here to speak with us and the rest of the members about evaluations, the good, the bad, and the ugly, as it were. And I'm excited to see you compete. I'm wondering, are you going to be competing in both clubs or in just one in particular? Both. Interesting. So you could compete against yourself, perhaps.
I think that they make you choose at the area level, but that would be an interesting contest, and I would like to see it.
I'm pretty sure you have enough energy. You could do it both clubs.
Oh, you're kind.
Well, listen, that's
I wish I agreed with you.
yeah. Well, that is the time we have. And Jessica, again, thank you so much for doing this for us. And if folks have any further questions or they need information about evaluations, I will make sure that they have your information posted as well as mine. And thanks again for your time. And we'll be able to talk to you soon.
No, thank you, Harlan, for the kind invitation. It was a lot of fun. I'm always happy to talk about anything related to evaluation, so feel free to hit me up.
Sounds great. Thanks now.
Thanks.